Hi guys, Robert Optimal Bodies, sponsored by Damn Fitness. Cheers for the hoodie, guys. If you want your own sort of clothing, get 10% off, quote Rob10. Go to damnfitness.com, check out their products, and then you can quote that and get a good discount. It's really good gym clothing, so I recommend you check it out. Okay, should we fear carbohydrates? Now, a lot of my videos, you might think I'm always bashing carbohydrates, I'm always putting negative things towards carbohydrates, and then I'm always promoting fat. Yes, that is what's supposed to come across, but you have to put it in context. Now, that information is not applicable to 100% of people, and it has to be put into relevance as well. Now, the carbohydrates we eat, the problems becomes problematic when they're eaten in excess. So I must emphasise that excessive carbohydrate consumption, that's when it becomes problematic. And to be honest, for most people, that is what they are doing. It might not seem like you are, but if you are very sedentary, you have a sedentary job, you drive to work, you get up in the morning, you sit down, you have your breakfast, you're in the car, so you're sitting down again, you might have a desk job, you sat down all day again, you might get up to make a coffee or a brew or something like that, or then you drive home, it's late, you're tired, you don't want to exercise, which is fair enough. We don't all have to exercise, that's your own path. If you don't want to do that, that's fair enough. And then you sit down and watch TV, again, you're not moving, you go to bed, you sleep 8 hours or whatever it may be. We're very sedentary as a population, we've got very lazy, and that's just how we are. It follows this certain pattern, and it's getting better, but there's not a massive percentage of people that are always exercising, and maybe they're not exercising to the intensity that they think they are, that they should be doing, to warrant eating a lot of carbohydrates. So I think we should split it into two sort of groups, just to keep it simple. You've got the very sedentary people, and you've got the very active people, and you're going to have people in between those 2 points. So if we start with very sedentary people, that's when they can easily overconsume carbohydrates, and that's when they become problematic. I'm not saying you shouldn't need them, and we'll get on to where the benefits of the carbohydrates, as they do have a place. But very sedentary, and that's not how we evolved. We were very active people. We didn't have this sort of lifestyle we have now, which we're always moving around. We had to hunt for our food, we had to run around, we got in fights, there weren't any laws, we were always moving, we were always using a fuel source and using a lot more than we are today. And it's looking like we're consuming about 120 times the amount of carbohydrates and sugar. Carbohydrates get broken down into sugar eventually, so you can put them in the same bracket. 120 times more than when we were moving around a lot. So there's two problems. We're eating more, we're moving less, which we all know. But what is that causing? So we're eating this massive amount more, and specifically carbohydrates, and it's because we're just scarce. There's so many carbohydrates. Every corner there's a McDonald's. You can get carbs all day, every day if you want. It's available. But that's not how we evolved. We didn't have that scarce availability of carbs. It might come in certain seasons. We'd have a big burst of them and we'd eat them, and then most of the time we'd be eating animals, maybe a few berries and nuts that we could find, but mainly on animal meats that were around most of the time. So we didn't have this opportunity to eat carbs all day, every day, throughout the whole amount of year. I know I'm going off a bit of a rant with that thing, but that's how I think it starts. We need to put it in context of what we've evolved to be able to eat. So that's when they become a problem. Now, so if you are in this sedentary population, and just be honest and think if you are, then carbohydrates, that's when they could become a disadvantage to you. It's your life, you want to eat them, that's fair enough. I'm just trying to provide the information. So the problems is because you've filled your carbohydrate fuel tanks, they're already full. Your muscles are full of carbs, your liver's full of carbs. The next place to go is your body fat. So there's an image-wise, you're going to put on weight, and that's why fat gain occurs if you're not using the carbs and you're putting them in. But there's also the health side of things. So excess carbohydrates get turned in, they go through the liver, they get turned into triglycerides. So they get turned into a sort of a fatty substance, which is carbs and fat together. And they get carried around the body in this LDL cholesterol that you've probably heard of, which is this bad cholesterol. And there's a couple of types that they found of LDL. One of them's not so bad and one's worse. And the problem is the excess carbs enhance the worst type of LDL, which can lead to the heart disease side of things, your clogged arteries, and then you've got your obesity, which we spoke of, and also diabetes can come from that. So that's all the negative sides of it, and if you see, it's because they're very sedentary. Now the other end of the spectrum, you've got all your high athletes. You might not be a professional, but you're doing a lot. You're in the gym. You might have some sort of sport. You're out sprinting around. You're doing football, something like that. You are a very active person compared to the sedentary people. And when we're very active, when we're doing bursts of energy, if it's a high weight, a heavy weight, or you're sprinting, that sort of thing, you're using carbohydrates as a fuel source, whereas these sedentary people aren't. So if you're using the carbs, you've got room to put them back in before you can get any detrimental effects from them. They're very different human beings in that sense. They're doing a lot of exercise and they can afford to eat the carbohydrates, and they can be very advantageous. So that's when you can afford to put them in, and it takes a lot of trial and error to knowing how much is too much, how much is not enough to be able to perform, and that's what you need to work out for yourself, or if you work with a coach, you can find that sort of sweet spot where they come in handy. So it's excessive carbohydrate consumption that's the problem, and if that hasn't come across in my previous post, then apologise for that, but that's what we're trying to come across. You have to put it in context. Not everything is applicable for every sort of person, because everyone is very, very different in the exercise, which we spoke of, but also very different in the body composition. So that becomes another issue. Even if you're doing a lot of exercise, but you've got admittedly you've got a lot of excess body fat, you can't see your abdominals. This again, you don't need a lot of carbohydrates even if you're doing intense exercise until you get quite lean as you're coming down. Because if you're wanting maximum health and image, you're going to perform very well if you've got a lot of carbohydrates on board, you've got a lot of body fat on board, but body fat is a carbohydrate storage system as well. So as you're dropping body fat, as you exercise, you're getting carbs released. That is a fuel source. That's what your body fat is there for. The more you have, the less carbs you need to eat until you get leaner, and then it depends on your goals. So there's so many factors, and you've got to put yourself on this spectrum. Where do you think you are, and will carbohydrates benefit you? Have you earned them? Have you trained? Do you really need them? And is your goal optimal health, or is it just performance? But I think we should be striving for both. You want to perform well in what you're doing, but you also want to be healthy. So unless you get your blood checked all the time, no one really knows what's going on inside the body. So you have to look for these telltale signs. It just so happens that obesity is very linked with the diabetes and vice versa. But you also get thin people that get heart disease. So it's hard to know what to do, and you just have to listen to your body and see what's going on. We're going off a bit of a rant, but I just wanted it to be put in context of what information I'm providing, and if you don't understand or you're a bit confused what I'm saying, as if I'm rambling on, then drop me a message and I can help figure out where on that spectrum you lie, depending on what you're wanting to achieve. So very, very thanks for listening. Hopefully this explains it a little bit better. It might have confused you even more, but I'm just trying to put it in context, as I've said. So excessive carbohydrate consumption, that's when the problems start to occur, as we're not supposed to handle that much at one time, and not all the time. We'd have probably a large burst every now and again. When we find a lot of food, we won't just store it away. We won't have seen it for a while, so we'd wolf it down, and then we might not see any for, it might be weeks, months, who knows what happened back in those days, but we do know we're consuming a lot more excessive amounts than we used to, and our body just can't handle that amount at one time. But if you're an athlete, it's a different story. So put it in context. Carbohydrates can be used to your advantage. The fuel high intensity exercise output for performance, the fuel muscle growth. They allow you to exercise, but you don't need them all the time. Put your body fat in context and your sedentary level, your exercise level. Okay, so cheers for listening, guys. Probably a lot of questions on this subject. Please comment below, send me a private message. Thanks for listening. Cheers, guys.